6 gang-related shootings in 8 months. Hundreds of patch members flooding into Canberra wearing their colors. Police spending nearly $500,000 just to monitor their meetings. Australia's outlaw motorcycle gangs aren't hiding anymore. They're gathering in broad daylight, and the Australian Federal Police is calling it a dangerous resurgence. The big 6 gangs that once tore each other apart are now doing something far more alarming. They're cooperating. The streets are heating up. Alliances are shifting, and the battle for Australia's billion-dollar drug empire is entering a new phase connection loop. What Australian Federal Police uncovered about these gangs will change everything you thought you knew about biker warfare. Body. The Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission dropped a bombshell. There are 38 outlaw motorcycle gangs operating across Australia with approximately 3,500 patch members, but 6 gangs dominate the landscape. The Rebels, Comancheros, Hells Angels, Bandidos, Mongols, and Finks. These aren't just motorcycle enthusiasts. Detective Superintendent Matthew Heather made it crystal clear. These are serious and organized crime networks involved in manufacturing and trafficking illicit drugs, intimidation, standover tactics, money laundering, tax evasion, and violent crime. Since January 2024, Canberra has become ground zero for something unprecedented. 7 large-scale outlaw motorcycle gang gatherings have taken place in Australia's capital, with hundreds of patch members riding in formation through the streets. The Rebels gathered in March 2024, with over 450 members. The Comancheros rolled in during September. The Hells Angels held their national meeting in February 2025, with at least 40 members. Most recently, the Bandidos converged on Canberra in November 2025. This is the first time the Bandidos have publicly gathered in the capital. Why Canberra? The Australian Capital Territory is the only jurisdiction in Australia without anti-consorting laws, bans on wearing colours, or firearm prohibition orders. The gangs know they can meet in large groups and wear their patches without legal consequences. ACT. Policing has been forced to divert massive resources just to monitor these gatherings. Between 2024 and 2025, police spent over $400,000 in overtime and salaries monitoring just 3 gang meetings. That's taxpayer money going toward babysitting criminals who are plotting their next moves in plain sight. Detective Superintendent Matthew Heather from ACT Policing confirmed what many feared. There's been a resurgence of outlaw motorcycle gang activity. After the 2020 murder of Comanchero Commander Pitasoni Ulavalu at Kokomo's nightclub in Canberra, police formed Task Force Nemesis, which successfully suppressed gang activity. The task force was disbanded in mid-2022, but by January 2024, the gangs were back. Police investigated 8 shootings in 2025, with 6 believed to be Bicky-related. Task Force Nvidia was formed at the beginning of 2024 to coordinate responses to large-scale gang events. Anthony Morgan from the Australian Institute of Criminology explained the timing. There was a massive lull in the illicit drug market after 2020 during the pandemic. Demand has rebounded post-COVID, and with it, the turf wars have reignited. The gangs are fighting over drug market territory, and conflicts spike when members switch clubs or personal disputes erupt. Let's talk about the power players. The Rebels remain Australia's largest outlaw motorcycle club, with approximately 2,000 members across 29 chapters. Founded in Brisbane in 1969 as the Confederates, they're a homegrown powerhouse. Alex Vella, the former national president known as the Maltese Falcon, built the club into a nationwide force. But Vella's visa was cancelled in 2014 while visiting Malta, leaving him stranded outside Australia. His relative Damien Vella took over as national president. The Rebels faced internal chaos in 2024. Senior Perth member Carl Labrook quit after 25 years, when his integrity was questioned by national president Damien Vella. Labrook had been furious about the lack of support from Sydney leadership during the Rebels' violent war with the Mongols gang in Western Australia. Police sources revealed that 36 Rebels members handed in their patches in a mass exodus. In an unprecedented move, these departing members kept their Harley-Davidson motorcycles, a direct rebuke to the Eastern leadership. In May 2024, LeBrook walked into Perth Magistrates Court wearing black and gold. Comanchero colors. The defection shocked the Australian underworld. At least 6 Western Australian rebels followed LeBrook to the Comancheros, and several high-profile East Coast rebels had already made the switch. Senior Comanchero leaders flew to Perth to hold meetings with disaffected rebels. Police are bracing for reprisals as the Comancheros actively recruit experienced bikies, though they're making even veterans serve time as nominees before handing them patches. The Comancheros are Australia's most feared organized crime outfit. Close to 20 people died in a Comanchero-linked gangland war that rocked Sydney in recent years. Founded by Scottish immigrant William Jock Ross in 1968, the Comancheros were excluded from the infamous Australia 2000 Pact in 1994, when 6 major gangs agreed to control criminal activities by the year 2000. That consolidation caused 35 murders between 1994 and 2000, reducing clubs from 178 to just 32. The Comancheros fiercely resisted disbandment. Starting in the late 1990s, they recruited massively from young men with Middle Eastern backgrounds to provide manpower for their struggle. This strategy worked. The Comancheros now have between 300 and 350 members, with chapters in New South Wales, South Australia, Western Australia, Victoria, and Queensland. They've expanded internationally to Spain and Serbia. But here's where it gets interesting. Australian Federal Police Superintendent Jared Taggart revealed something that changes the entire game. Despite violent clashes between the Comancheros and Hells Angels, they're cooperating. Taggart stated it plainly. It's an ever-evolving business model of transnational serious organized crime. Their willingness to cooperate together, even when claiming to be enemies, is smoke and mirrors. It's all about power, control, and harm to communities. The Hells Angels expanded to Australia in 1975, establishing chapters in Melbourne and Sydney. They now have approximately 250 members across 14 chapters. Their national commander, Angelo Pandelli, operates offshore. The club's traditional activities include drug trafficking, prostitution, armed robbery, arms trafficking, and murder for hire. More recently, they've moved into legitimate businesses like gyms, tattoo parlors, haulage companies, and security services to launder money and exploit new income streams. The 2009 Sydney Airport brawl between the Hells Angels and Comancheros became a defining moment. 10 members from both gangs clashed in front of over 50 travelers after flying in from a supposed peace summit in Melbourne. Anthony Zervas, the brother of a Hells Angel, was bashed to death with a steel post. Comancheros leader Mahmoud Mick Howie was convicted of affray and murder. Though the murder conviction was later overturned, Howie was released in 2015 only to be shot dead outside a gym in Rockdale in February 2018 at age 37. The Bandidos, one of the big 4 American gangs, have 45 chapters across Australia with between 250 and 400 members. They've actively recruited from ethnic groups in recent years. The Bandidos Australian chapter was created by former Comancheros who broke away. This sparked the catastrophic Milpera massacre in 1984. On Father's Day, September 2nd, the Comancheros and Bandidos met at the Viking Tavern in Milpera for what became a full-scale gun battle. 7 people were killed, including a 14-year-old girl, and 28 were injured. The massacre was a catalyst for significant changes to gun laws in New South Wales. In November 2025, the Bandidos held their first public gathering in Canberra, marking the 7th large-scale gang meeting in the ACT. Since January 2024, police set up checkpoints along Derry Road in Fishwick, breath testing and drug testing members while surveying motorcycle conditions. The bikies were cooperative, waving to reporters before revving their engines and riding off. The Mongols represent one of the most significant power shifts in Australian gang history. In October 2013, approximately 90% of the Finks membership patched over to the Mongols in the largest motorcycle club amalgamation in Australian history. The merger gave the Mongols around 400 members, with chapters in New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, South Australia, and Western Australia. They became one of the most powerful bike gangs in the country virtually overnight. The Finks were formed in Adelaide in 1969, taking their name from the Wizard of Id cartoon. Despite the mass defection to the Mongols, some Finks members remained loyal to the original club. Tensions between the Mongols and Finks erupted in June 2024 with an arson attack and brawl at the Gold Coast's Australia Fair shopping centre. In April 2025, court testimony revealed that the ACT rebels had disbanded and patched over to become the Finks, with Ali Bilal, the former president of Canberra rebels, now believed to be a world president of the Finks. The Mongols are designated as the third largest outlaw biker club in the world, after the Hells Angels and Outlaws. Law enforcement in the United States considers them the most violent and dangerous motorcycle gang. A decade-long prosecution ended with a California jury finding the Mongol nation guilty of racketeering, conspiracy to murder, attempted murder, and drug dealing. An undercover agent who infiltrated the gang was told during his patching ceremony, "Being a Mongol promises you one of two things, death or prison." The most alarming development is what Australian intelligence agencies call the Aussie Cartel. The Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission confirmed that a network of Australian organised crime entities, largely based offshore, is likely one of the most significant serious organised crime threats impacting Australia. Many Aussie Cartel members are Australian outlaw motorcycle gang members, and they have significant influence over gangs still operating in Australia. ACIC assessments show collaborative efforts between the Comancheros and Hells Angels, including offshore members. These larger gangs interoperate and in some cases control smaller clubs to leverage onshore distribution networks and offset risk. Over the last few years, the Aussie Cartel likely imported more methamphetamine and cocaine into Australia than any other group. These imports were worth billions of dollars. The key players have fled Australia to avoid law enforcement. Comanchero boss Mark Buttle operates from the United Arab Emirates. Hells Angels national commander Angelo Pandelli lives in Greece and the UAE. Other cartel members are scattered across Turkey, Lebanon, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Australian federal police confirmed they've targeted outlaw motorcycle gangs in Southeast Asia, who relocated to escape Australian law enforcement. Project Brunello, a classified federal intelligence operation, revealed the cartel's infiltration strategy. Approximately 60 Qantas staff were linked to serious drug offenses or organized crime groups. A Comanchero motorcycle gang affiliate working in a managerial position at Sydney Airport has links to Hakan Ayik, the head of an international drug cartel. A Qantas contractor in the Northern Territory is linked to the Hells Angels. A Qantas freight contractor in Perth repeatedly used his insider status to make major drug deliveries. These trusted insiders create doors at Australia's borders, minimizing chances of interdiction. The cartel finances and facilitates encrypted communication devices, hardening communications from interception. They don't just use these devices, they specifically introduced some of them to the Australian domestic criminal environment. The AFP's Operation Ironside exploited one such platform, AN0M, which was secretly run by the FBI. Over 3 years, detectives uncovered 21 murder plots, gun distribution networks, and mass drug trafficking operations. Police seized 3.7 tons of drugs, 104 weapons, and almost $45 million in cash. They charged 224 alleged offenders with 525 charges and shut down 6 clandestine laboratories. Forensic psychologist and criminologist Tim Watson-Monroe noted that modern gangs cooperate more now than previous generations. The Comancheros, Hells Angels, and Finks were all previously at war with one another. That's changed. Money is the prime mover in illegal markets. If someone's willing to buy, someone else is willing to supply. And the gangs have learned that cooperation is more profitable than conflict. National Task Force Morpheus represents the coordinated law enforcement response. This joint initiative targets the highest threat outlaw motorcycle gangs impacting Australia. In August 2025, officers from the Australian Border Force, Australian Taxation Office, Queensland Police Service, and Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission executed warrants targeting the Mongols, seizing drugs, weapons, and conducting financial investigations. The recruitment process reveals how these organizations maintain power. Most gangs have well-defined processes focused on testing reliability, loyalty, and outlaw values. Potential members spend months to years getting to know members by attending clubhouse events and going on rides. They then become nominees for 1 to 2 years before chapter members vote on full membership. An ex-bikie told the Australian Institute of Criminology what draws people in. A lot of these young guys get pulled into the business, and you can make big dollars selling stuff you shouldn't be selling. Why go to work 40 hours for $1,500 when you can get that in one deal and sit out the rest of the week? So, who's winning the turf war? The answer isn't simple. The rebels remain the largest club numerically, but they're hemorrhaging members to the Comancheros in Western Australia. The Comancheros are expanding aggressively, absorbing experienced bickies from rival clubs. The Hells Angels maintain their position through international connections and offshore leadership. The Mongols grew overnight through the Finks merger and continue their violent expansion. The Bandidos hold steady with their 45 chapters and ethnic recruitment strategy, but the real winner, the Aussie cartel. By operating offshore and cooperating across traditional gang rivalries, they've created a billion-dollar drug importation network that's more resilient than ever. Former enemies now share supply routes and smuggling methods. They corrupt public and private sector employees. They earn an estimated $1.5 billion annually and are responsible for approximately 1/3 of all drug importations into Australia. Australian federal police and state authorities are fighting back with dedicated task forces. But the challenge is unprecedented. With gang leadership offshore in countries with difficult extradition processes, billions of dollars funding sophisticated operations, and corrupted insiders at Australia's borders, law enforcement faces an evolving enemy that's learned to put profit above traditional gang rivalries. The resurgence is real. The cooperation between former enemies is documented. The offshore cartel is operational. Australia's Big Six aren't just fighting each other anymore. They're working together to flood Australian communities with drugs. And they're doing it from countries where Australian law can't reach them. The turf war has gone global, and the streets of Australia are paying the price.